Today, we're discussing how to find a mentor. Now, a few years ago, the word mentor and that whole concept really blew up in the personal development world because a lot of successful people mention how they attribute their success to having a mentor, oftentimes someone directly that was skilled at what they did, who taught them, who gave them advice so they could accelerate their growth faster. Because of that, hordes of young people for several years and even to this day mobbed successful people and did a bunch of things, Instagram DM'd them and so forth, to find mentors. Unfortunately, in mostly ineffective ways by just asking for it. And due to the law of supply and demand and the fact that they're not really bringing any value to the table and everyone's asking the same thing, most of them couldn't find good mentors. I mean, most of them often would bombard the same people as well. And people like Gary Vaynerchuk, I would argue that less than 1%, probably less than 0.01% of the people who reached out to him, he even responded to and were open to mentoring, given his time and busyness. So how exactly do you actually find a mentor? Is it as hyped up and amazing as it is? And what else can you do here? So first off, this video was inspired by the founder of Twitch, who recently did a YouTube short on finding a mentor. And he basically, went through the same thing. His YouTube channel is blowing up, but he basically mentioned how he's just bombed every day with tons of people just straight up asking, can you mentor me? Oftentimes in very bad ways, with broken English, bad grammar, low effort, and just asking, taking value without realizing how many people are bombarding him. And he said, these things are 100% ineffective, they'll never work. Instead, he says, you have to find some way of standing out and providing value in exchange. This value doesn't have to come in the form of money, but in some other way, such as some type of thing that the mentor would take away from coming to you with, or some other level of skill set or value that can be brought to the table. Now, this is a bit vague, but I understand where he's coming from. And if you can use empathy, you can also really start to bridge the gap and do a better job. But to give you more specific examples from my own life, some of the ways I was able to get in contact with some great podcast guests, such as the biographer behind Bruce Lee's biography, and an established model, an established entrepreneur and millionaire, was because I brought something to the table that they would value. I never come into these things just saying, can I have this? Instead, I usually come in saying and looking at what they could potentially get out of it versus what I have to offer. I'm not a expert and flawless at this, but I'm constantly improving and I've seen some gains from it. And so that usually means coming in by saying, hey, I run one of the top Asian American millennial student podcasts. You can get in front of this audience by being on my podcast. Or I come in from a different angle. I was able to work on a freelance basis for a one-time contract with Ramit Sethi, with Neil Patel. Very giant names in the marketing and entrepreneurship space online, by not coming in like everyone else and saying, hey, this is what I want from you. Instead, I came in both times just out of sheer generosity by saying, hey, these are certain things you're doing wrong. I have a lot of knowledge and experience on this because I'm always learning about social media marketing. This is what I would fix. This is how I would fix it. And this is all the stuff that you could do differently. And that's how I got some consulting gigs and implementation gigs for some emerging social media platforms for them. I didn't, for Ramit, I didn't even ask for the sale. I just demonstrated, not even expecting that to ever turn into anything, just trying to help out from the kindness of my heart. And he was blown away and he asked me to help out. He even said, this is how you do it. So when you apply that to mentoring, same thing. Where's the empathy? What's some value you can have? There's always something, even if you're a broke college student, there's always something that you can do, something that you can learn. Maybe you're good at graphic design or music or something. And maybe you're not, but that's something that you can develop as a skill. You could present that to them. Hey, I can help you with this, but I'm really seeking some mentorship as well. Maybe we could do some type of exchange. You find the best language, try different things, but if you have the empathy, you can get a much better response. Now here's the other big thing, maybe even more important, and I've saved this for last because of the hardcore subscribers who really deserve this. Expand your view of the definition of the word mentor. Now, I was reading Jack Welch's book, Winning, and there's a podcast episode I filmed a long time ago that goes into more detail on this topic, but in terms of mentorship, he has this whole paragraph section dedicated to finding mentors, what it means to be a mentor, and he kind of addresses this hype around mentorship, and people seem to get it wrong. They get this idea that the only way for it to count as a mentor is if you have this person that you meet in person on a very frequent basis, daily, who's this kind of old, wise guy, maybe with a stick or a staff, but maybe not. But the point is he's super skilled in this thing, and you have to interface with him in person daily or at least weekly. And he has to be older and more established in that skill set. Jack says, he's had mentors throughout his life, but they were all different types and of all different periods. He had this guy who was his junior by a few degrees at his company, General Electric, but for a few weeks, just a few weeks, that guy was his mentor because he was an expert in a new subdivision. I can't remember what it was, plastics or some type of manufacturing of a certain product. He was Jack's mentor for a few weeks because that guy was an expert in that subdivision, and that guy became the guy who was teaching him everything about that division when it was transferred to him. And so for those few weeks, 7-8 weeks, he was the mentor. After that, they departed, they left. And even though this guy was younger and a lesser title, that was his mentor. Through this idea, I've really kind of started to relieve some of this ridiculous story I tell myself about what a mentor is and what it isn't. And therefore, I've now started to define the people who have mentored me in a different way. Warren Buffett has mentored me in many ways through all the shareholder meetings I've watched, all the videos footage I've watched of him. I think I've seen almost everything on the internet about him. There's actually less footage than you would think about Warren Buffett. He doesn't go online that often or on video that often. But I've never met him. And yet I still learned a tremendous amount from him, even though I've never had a in-person or direct feedback. Similarly, through courses on masterclass.com, I've learned a tremendous deal about cooking, about storytelling, about creativity, and about a variety of other topics, real estate and so forth, through those courses, even though I've never directly interfaced with Christina Aguilera, with Gordon Ramsay, with all these other people, deadmau 5. But that's the intention of these courses. They're trying to mentor people on a large scale when they have limited time. And some people, unfortunately, devalue these things, when in reality, the real thing that matters is the substance of the lessons learned. Sure, someone can be nitpicking and say, I could learn more if I had direct feedback from Christina Aguilera about my coaching. Well, maybe you could, but maybe you're a beginner and you don't need that level of direct interface yet anyways. I would argue that until you get to an advanced level, you really don't need those subtle nuances. If you're learning the fundamentals about anything, whether that's Olympic weightlifting or writing, you just need basic instruction for a while to get yourself started. And then even at the intermediate level, a lot of these concepts can really still pull you far. I have a lot of mentorship from these digital and print indirect sources, like audiobooks, print books, online courses, podcasts, and so forth. But then, you know, that doesn't mean I'm stuck with them. There's also direct sources as well, some of which that I want to recommend now because they are very valuable and they will get you in contact with people that are valuable to you. So I've had people in my local community. I've also had, there's also websites like score.org, which links you with retired entrepreneurs, CEOs of successful businesses. And there's, tens of thousands, over 100,000 people that get mentored and find mentors on score.org. And there's people in my local community. There's someone at my CrossFit gym who has competed on the national level, I think even international. I wouldn't say he did very, very well, but he was eligible to compete on those levels. And that's more than good enough to learn and train for him, because he's had decades of experience training thousands of people. And that's more than good enough for me for Olympic weightlifting. It doesn't always have to be some world champion to really progress, or even some national or state level champion. You just need someone good enough to get you from where you are to a point beyond. And so I've really learned over the years to kind of not have these crazy standards or this strange specific picture of what a mentor is. And because of that, you can find mentors in your community. I used to think, I had to find this impressive individual, multi-millionaire, had to have all these things ticked. And sure, if you can find that, definitely go ahead and find that. If you have a crystal clear view of who you want to be, and that person is unique, maybe it's Will Smith, and you only want to be mentored by Will Smith because, you want to be him and no one else, then maybe, you could join some of his production companies or like side companies or freelance for him. There's people doing that. Aiden on YouTube, or Aiden on Instagram, or is it Aiden or something else? But there are people on Instagram who basically freelance videography or edit for his social media. And these are young kids, so they've gotten close to the sun in a way. But that's very hard to do, and you should still try and do it if that's your goal and situation. But there's all sorts of local mentors that can help you a lot. For me, I've been I at least in the past, before COVID, I used to work on my public speaking. And I went to a local Toastmasters chapter. And no, none of these people are some famous multimillionaire or anything like that. They are just better at public speaking than me in certain ways. And through that feedback, I can improve. And in those senses, they are mentors to me. So that's what I got to say about mentorship. And hopefully it will benefit you in some way. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. Like and subscribe.